Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Michael Hanson, and this is the MMA Conspiracy Hour, hosted by Todd Atkins and Miguel Iterante. Todd has been covering the sport of mixed martial arts for over 2 decades, and Miguel has served as a matchmaker for hundreds of events around the world. Subscribe so that you never miss one of their episodes. And as for me, you can find me on Instagram at the Michael Hanson. And now, without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with me and Todd. I'll record.
All right, this is Todd Atkins, and I'm back with Michael Hanson. Always a great guest on my show. Been too long since I had him.
Yeah,
You got to
man,
reach
it's been a
out to me
minute.
sometimes and remind me because I do so much of this stuff. But
Yeah.
he's a announcer, a rising announcer in combat sports, and I'm gonna kind of let him introduce himself and maybe talk a little bit about some of that stuff before we get into our topics today.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute. It's great to always come on with you and just chop it up and just talk MMA. It's my favorite sport, going on 15 years now, and it's half of the huge reason why I wanted to become a ring announcer to begin with, is because I started out as an actor, as a theater actor, and I also was a huge MMA fan. And I just thought I wanted to basically combine the two passions just to keep it nice and brief. And I got my first crack at it back at the very end of 2019, and haven't really looked back. And it's been steadily growing, thank God. And there was a kind of global pandemic in the beginning of it, but we weathered that storm, I guess, career wise, and here we are. Now I'm the ring announcer for Anthony Pettis' promotion, APFC, and it's a great relationship there. And I've had great relationships everywhere I've gone, man. And I've done Muay Thai, boxing, and MMA, and I've also just emceed and hosted different kinds of events like galas and things like that, award shows a little bit. And those are always really fun too. But ring announcing is my main squeeze, and I'm gonna keep pushing, baby, till we make it to the top.
Do you ever bring your family with you or no?
I'm gonna be bringing my wife with me for the first time in March for the first APFC of this year. It's gonna be at this awesome casino in Milwaukee called the Potawatomi, and we went there once towards the end of last year, and it was like their biggest and coolest venue yet. And I said to the promoter, I was like, "Is it okay if I bring my wife to one of these?" And he was like, "Oh man, of course." So I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So is it just APFC or what are the other ones you're working with?
Right now, APFC is my main squeeze. I booked this awesome Michigan-based Muay Thai promotion called Mitten Muay Thai, and I did their first 3 events in 2024. Their inaugural event back in this past, basically almost 1 year ago exactly. And we have parted ways because they basically booked somebody else, and that's part of the business too. We
Right.
can talk more. And not I'm not going to talk any shit. I love those guys. They're doing their thing, and they're growing. So hopefully I get to work with them again someday.
All right, so let's kind of get into our topics today. For people that are watching this, we're gonna kind of do a little GFL draft, and also Michael wanted to talk about Knucklemania,
Yeah.
and kind of he feels there's a few angles from that just happened. Maybe let's start with the draft though, because that was kind of fresh in my mind. I actually live streamed it. I thought when I was watching it that it was going to be like the NFL draft, like first pick, and have somebody on the clock. Now this city's on the clock, blah blah, blah. But it wasn't that. Um,
Yeah.
what did you think of it?
I think, first of all, go capitalism, man, because like once there's a little bit of a hole that opens up in a market, it's just, Bellator got absorbed by PFL and then just kind of sunsetted, and then boom, here's GFL just in time to just like literally right on time to fill the gap that was left by that other major promotion. And now GFL, it seems as though they've have some kind of deep pockets backer and have raised a whole bunch of seed capital. and they're trying to do the damn thing, and they're trying to establish themselves as another one of these, major players. They're trying to be more than just a regional, and I say just in big air quotes. They're trying to be more than a regional promotion. They're trying to be one of the, I mean, it's in their name. They put it in their name. They're trying to be one of the global promotions out there. So, hey man, I wish them all the best. And if they ever need an announcer, uh, I'd love to work with them. But it was it seemed like the kind of thing where, I mean, that the gentleman's name, I believe his name is Darren Owen, right? Darren.
Hmm.
Um, I watched his interview on Ariel Helwani's show, and he seemed to kind of say that like we're just gonna go ahead and go. And I got the sense that that kind of meant done is better than perfect. Like we're not gonna wait until it's fully formed. We're just gonna take off, and it might be a little bumpy to get out the gate, but they're gonna get out of the goddamn gate. And it's like there clearly is some there. You see the money. Like they had like a whole set. They had like a really impressive set for like a first ever thing that they were do. They had Robin Black, Brendan Schaub, I believe it's her name's Carolyn
Yeah, yeah.
Pierce, and Mike Goldberg. So I mean, hey, they're definitely trying to hire some legitimate talent, some already big names in the sport with their own gravity, with their own followings to pump into their brand. And then yeah, the draft was the draft. The draft was like, is this really a draft? Uh,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was, I was getting tired watching it because it wasn't like it's the first 10 picks or so took forever. I was like, if this is how they're going to do the whole draft, we're going to be here
Yeah.
all night and into the morning, but I was hoping to see like a draft, first pick, this city's on the clock, second pick, but it wasn't that, and it almost, as soon as Tyron Woodley was the first fighter picked, I was like, come on, there's
Who do you
something
think
not
should have
right
been the
about
first
this.
pick?
Not him, because he's already basically retired. He hasn't looked good in a fight in a long, 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 long time, many years. He's lost most of his last few fights in the UFC.
His
And
first, the first team was what? Was it L.A. or was it Dubai? It
Dubai, apparently
was Dubai.
I think he's living there doing some business there.
Is he really? Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Um, but for me, it's like I would have chose somebody that maybe nobody even knew. Somebody who's younger, somebody who's maybe got a 10-0 record or something. Somebody who you know has potential to win a lot of fights because it's a team event. You're trying to win fights.
Yeah. Out of all of the names that were eligible for this draft, who do you think was the best fighter in the field?
Oh dang, that there were a lot of people eligible for it.
There was a lot.
I couldn't even begin to think about that. Um,
I want to say maybe somebody like Douglas Lima. Killer.
yeah, he is. He's on the tail end of his career. He was great when he was, coming up and in his prime. He was awesome, no doubt about it. I was a big fan of the Bjorn Rebney Bellator era,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he kind of came up in that. He was a sensational fighter at one time.
Yeah.
But I thought that's the direction we'd see, where they're going more at the younger athletes. But there were a lot of older athletes that were in the field to be, drafted, and they did get drafted, most of them.
To be honest, I'm kind of two minds of it because on the one hand, there are certain names that are now a part of the GFL that, as a fan and somebody who has really rooted for some of these guys for many, many years now, and to the extent that I care about them in that way, like you want to see them not sustain any more punishment, any more head trauma, you know. For those who are watching it or listening who are also diehards, I don't need to say certain names. But on the other hand, I'm glad, like alluding to back to the beginning when I was like, go capitalism. I'm glad that there is another platform that has raised a ton of money that's going to put, who knows how much, five figures, six figures into some of these guys' pockets
Mm.
at the tail end of their fighting careers. So I say power to them. And if they take another fight against another guy who's also at the tail end of his career, then power to him.
Like if the Dallas Cowboys selected Troy Aikman today, people would be saying, "What? Why?"
Right.
And so when
Uh,
Tyron Woodley got picked, I was like, out of all the people that could be drafted, you chose Tyron Woodley first. You know, wouldn't you want to pick someone who's on a winning streak rather than someone who lost, the
yeah.
majority of their last few fights? I don't know how many in a row he lost, but he didn't look good in any of those. He didn't even look like himself anymore.
Mm.
So that's
Hey,
when I was like, there's probably some stuff going on with this draft, where
yeah.
it's not really a draft. Junior Dos Santos, I think he's the second pick or third pick.
Right. Yeah.
He wouldn't have been the first person on my mind. I'd have been looking at the younger athletes that have more upside.
Yeah. Like a Sage.
Myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
not even
Right.
Sage Northcutt,
Not
because
even him.
no,
He's good.
because he hadn't shown me enough. You know, when he was injured and stuff, he's out a long time. He
That's
hadn't
true.
shown me enough. But I probably would have looked through some of the younger athletes, see what the records are, and
Hmm.
maybe a wrestler from somewhere Dagestan or Chechnya or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, those are the guys I probably would have looked at.
Number one draft pick of the night. Anyone from Dagestan?
Yeah, because they're reliable, and that's something we can get into
Hey.
also. Because
Yeah.
I had actually made the Moneyball video where I was kind of referencing this. This is becoming a problem that other people are going to have to try and solve somehow. How I don't know, but you got
What's the problem?
like I don't know if you ever saw Moneyball with Brad Pitt.
Oh yeah. Great
You
movie.
remember when he said, "Okay, what's the problem?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we got to get this many hits. This no, what's the problem?" He kept going to his scouts, and he said the
Uh-huh.
problem we're trying to solve is there's rich teams and there's poor teams, and then
Yeah.
there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. That's what he said. So I was saying, in Dagestan they have all these Olympians.
Hmm.
A lot of guys will never train with an Olympian gold medalist in wrestling. They got they're plentiful over there. They got tons of guys in the room that are at that level in these gyms in Dagestan. And like Khabib was saying, we don't need to invite anybody else. Why? We got 40 people in my room that are, amazing. Why do I need to bring someone from some other country into our training?
Of
You know,
course.
I
If it
don't need
ain't
it.
broke, if it
Yeah.
ain't broke, don't fix it.
And so it's a problem where these other fighters outside of Dagestan, in U.S., Mexico, all these other places,
Hmm.
it's tough for them to beat them. You know, we got this handful of people, Eastern European fighters, Kazakhstan, Dagestan, Chechnya,
Hmm. Yep.
and they're beating everybody
They are. They are
in
beating
all
everybody.
promotions, not just in UFC. I saw PFL had a couple of great ones I watched the other night.
Hmm.
Ibrahim, God, you
Dude,
know,
it's just it's something in the water over there, man.
yeah,
I mean, look, it's either do I think it's something genetic? No, of course not. It has to be it's in their culture,
that's right.
whatever that means. I mean, I've never been to Dagestan, so I don't know exactly what that means when I say that, but it's something about their culture and how they train and yeah.
There's so many good wrestlers there that a lot of guys will leave Dagestan to get on another country's Olympic team because they
Wow.
can't get on the Olympic team in Russia.
Yeah.
And they'll place or they'll medal for Turkey or wherever,
Yeah.
but really they're from Dagestan. And that's how crazy it is. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
So it's
It's a
just
culture thing, man. It's the same reason why so many, marathon runners are all from the same
yeah,
country and why so many chess champions are all from Russia and India. And is it genetic? No, it's something cultural and it's the rich get richer, I guess.
yeah. I
So
think it's going to be hard for guys to. It's a problem that other guys are going to be faced with solving.
and it's not
They don't
it's
have
not
to
a problem
solve
for
it. They've
them.
already mastered it, to some
It's
extent.
it's only a problem for Americans and
Yeah,
non-Russians. For them, it is not a problem at all. They're
right.
really they've struck gold. They're doing something right. They found a formula that really works for them.
Right. Yeah, but back to the draft, like for me, yeah, they had the set, but these outfits and stuff I thought were a little bit much. These Power Ranger looking type outfits, they had them, I guess it was AI is what some people were saying.
It
But
looked like an AI, yeah, generated video.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
kind of
a
like, what
it
are we
was
doing
a
here? You know, like,
it was a choice. It was a bold choice. It was a bold choice.
yeah, I
But
mean, unless they're gonna fight in those or something, I don't know. You know,
now that would be interesting.
yeah, but it just kind of, it was just a little weird to me a little bit. It seemed someone said it looked like a Saturday Night Live skit. You know, like,
I mean, what was interesting is that they clearly pumped a lot of money into their set and into their on-set talent, of course. But to your point that you made earlier, I thought too, I was like, oh man, if this was a draft, I thought that they were going to have some kind of rented, at least like a giant ballroom or some kind of theater.
yep,
And to have like, a la, David Stern or Adam Silver stepping up to the microphone, and, with the ninth pick, the Los Angeles, and none of the teams had names, by the way, yet, or maybe at all. But he said, Los Angeles selects so and so, or like opens an envelope. So it did seem like that was not a part of the draft experience that a lot of the money went into.
yeah, you could have brought in people for free to watch as the audience. You know, stand out in the crowd cheering each pick or booing it or whatever. I thought that would have made it better. The reason I live streamed during it is like, this is the first draft ever in MMA history. This is going to be a draft. This is going to be awesome. And I felt let down.
Hey, there are still so many question marks I have though with GFL. Like what are their events going to look like?
They don't even have anything scheduled. They don't have any dates. They don't have any locations.
And I think they're supposed to start throwing punches in March or April.
Right.
That's like that's like in a 30 to 60 days from now.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, a promotion like GFL that's trying to become one of the premier promotions on the global stage, they don't get thrown together in a week. This is, I'm sure, been years of planning that have gone into this. So I'm sure they've been in conversations with different venues in these cities. So I'm just, as we all are, but I'm still pretty curious as to how this is going to start to play out and pan out and evolve, just as the UFC
Yeah.
evolved over the years.
Yeah. You know, PFL's changes. We can talk about that too, because, like I said, I was a huge fan of Bjorn Rebney's product,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, they're mostly going to use this format now for the most part. His was, you have to win 3 fights in 12 weeks. You
Hmm.
know, and so when they added on Spike TV, the man channel, they
Yeah.
you would see the guy win one, then next you'd see him win again and again. Basically over almost 3 months, you'd see the guy win 3 or 4 times, win a tournament, and I felt it was really organic. He didn't have any kind of UFC guys, former UFC fighters. These are guys that had never been in the UFC,
Mm-hmm.
and they built a lot of guys that way. Guys like Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, Ben Askren. Uh, they had a lot of guys from Eastern Europe before the UFC did. Um, yeah, they had Storm Flamenco was one. They they just had a lot of Douglas Lima. I can go on and on about some of these guys, but it organically produced some talent and stars for their event. Pat
Mm-hmm.
Curran was another one. Um, so in that way, I felt I really liked it because I knew when it was going to be on. It wasn't on Saturdays. I think it was like every Thursday night. I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they'd have. I think they had two weight class tournaments each season, the 12 weeks,
Yeah.
and then they'd be off for a period of time and do it again. And it was easy to follow. It's going to be on every Thursday night. They have a bracket. These guys are going to have to fight each other. I don't wonder who's he going to fight next. You already know the guy who won
Mm-hmm.
the other fight. You know, so I felt it was easy to follow and not a lot of that. Oh, we got to figure out what match to make. What do you think about the changes? They did away with the season, got rid of the points. It's all going to be tournaments now.
I think it's an improvement. I do. I thought the season was it was a good try, but I think tournaments for combat sports just work better. And that's also my biggest concern for GFL. You know, other MMA media talking heads are all much more critical of GFL. I'm talking like the Ariels and the Luke Thomases. I think Luke Thomas was like, "Don't call them GFL, call them what is it? Dead on arrival, DOA.
DOA.
Um, I'm concerned about the season and points and teams thing because the sport is still not played. It's what's the word? Prosecuted as an individual
Mhm.
endeavor. So I don't quite understand how it's going to be a team sport when it's not. I'm going to use the word played. It's not played as a team sport. It's still played as an individual thing. And yeah, and PFL has tried that for a few years now to not, well, not as a team aspect, but in terms of like a season and points thing. So
Yeah, and there was an organization called the IFL that tried to do events
yeah,
like this, and they thought, okay, we're going to sell a lot of merchandise. That's what they thought. These people will get behind the cities, and the fans in these
yeah,
cities will buy all their jerseys, and it'll be like the NFL. They'll just buy them up, and it didn't happen.
yeah.
They
Again,
weren't
like
really
that.
going with the fighters. They were saying we're going to sell merch like crazy.
That's what they thought they were going to be the LA robber barons or whatever it
Yeah,
was, and we're
yeah,
going to sell
exactly.
those jerseys and hats and T-shirts
Yep.
and all the gloves and stuff. I mean, again, like I'm curious in terms of it being a team sport because PFL, even though it was a season, was not a team sport.
Right.
GFL's like we're having teams, and there's not just like five dudes on these teams. There's like 20 people, 20 fighters on these teams. Most of them on each of these six teams are all big name, well known people, at least within the MMA world. So I'm like, at the events, again, going back to it being a team sport, like, are all the other people on the team who are not in the fight, are they going to be cage side or on the sideline, or are they all going to be sort of there rooting on their teammates, or no? I'm guessing no. What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's true. The thing I think IFL had problems with if you have like one of your, you have the different weight class, you have one of your guys fall out, maybe two. Now you got a big problem because that's
Well,
your
that's the
team
thing.
and you don't have anybody else.
And I know that the justification for having two fighters per weight class on each team
Hmm.
for that very reason, I think, of like
Hmm.
if your welterweight in this bout gets injured, then your that team's other welterweight is going to slide right in.
Yeah.
It might be tricky. It might be tricky.
My problem is it's hard to follow like the PFL was. I got to keep track of points. I got to keep track of this, that, the other. It's too much, as to where with the Bellator format that PFL is going to. The tournament is easy to follow. You got this many guys in the tournament. Some of them are going to win. They're going to fight each other. And some more are
Right.
going to win. And then finally, the last two are going to be there. It's not
Do you feel like a
complicated at all.
do you feel like a tournament with like a, with that bracket format is is the extent to which a combat sport can have a structure to it like that?
Yeah, because um, the UFC, as popular as it is, it's just a lot of like, okay, let's figure out who throw something at the wall and hope that
Who's
it
up
sticks.
next? Yeah.
We got to figure out who's going to be next. Who wants to fight each other? Who's not willing to fight each other? Blah blah blah. You're in this tournament. You're fighting. Period. There's no, I don't
Right.
want to fight this guy who's at the bottom of the bracket. Or he's from Dagestan. I don't want to fight him. You know, you're going to
Yeah.
fight whoever's in the tournament, and if you're not, you can pack your bags. You know, it's very simple in
I mean,
that way. You don't have to make matches. I guess you could make some in the, they might try to get certain people along in the tournament. Who knows? In my opinion, they
yeah.
should do like K1 did. K1 used to have hopper balls, like the
Mm.
NBA lottery, right?
Yeah,
Remember how,
yeah.
and have so they would have a live show where they would do their bracket
Yeah.
in Japan, and they'd have the hopper ball, and one would come out and it'd say Ernesto Hust on it, and then the next one come out and it'd say whoever, and
Hmm.
they're talking about the whole time. Oh wow, this is gonna be amazing. So they were really just they were not picking who was gonna be a what. And I thought that could be an interesting way for PFL to do that. They should do something like that. When they do
That
the
would be
brackets,
cool.
maybe have like a random draw like that. And have a show
Hmm.
where they're doing it on YouTube or whatever. You don't have to have it on TV, but Could if you get there at some point, but I think that'd be really cool. I don't know if they'll do that, but I think that'd be really cool to do.
It seems like the most natural structure of a combat sport is the structure that just has sort of organically taken shape of all major combat sports, boxing and UFC, just it being like a loosely on, always on, forever ongoing, almost like a tournament, but not really, because then those other things come into play like popularity, superstardom, logistics, guys who do or don't want to fight some other up and comer and they want to wait. And then there's all those factors swirling around. So sometimes it does feel more like a tournament because it's the next guy up who has proven himself and has gone up. He fought the number 15 guy, then he fought the number 9 guy, then he fought the number 6 guy. And it's like, okay, now is his time. He's climbed to the top of the pyramid. But then there's other times where in any given weight class, that's not exactly how it's working out. And then it's kind of like, okay, the champion, they want their champion to be active and they're going to reach down and they're going to fight the number 7 guy who just won 3 in a row. And because the champ has beaten the other top 5 guys. And
Hmm.
it's just this ongoing sort of loose tournament that has other things at play. But I like your point, though, that in those actual tournaments, it's more cut and dry, and that is actually kind of satisfying for the fan.
And the person who wins the tournament, they fight the champion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the one thing that Bellator had a payment problem with, and I think PFL addressed this a little bit, is it was difficult for them to keep the champions busy because they were waiting for someone to win a tournament.
Yeah.
For some, so they're gonna have some separate like champion series events.
Yeah.
You know, where maybe that guy could fight on one of those, or something like that if he's not getting enough fights. So I think that's one pain point area that they addressed, that Bjorn Rebney never was able to address in his format.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I also think PFL's kind of adopting his strategy too, because they're letting all the guys who have good contracts go.
Mm-hmm.
All these well-known, established people in Bellator, they're like, bye bye. You know,
Yeah.
we're just gonna build guys up organically, and that's what we'll do.
I guess that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like are you happy that there are multiple different promotions in MMA, or do you wish that it was all just one, like it is in football, like it is in basketball? Well, of course, it's different because those leagues are so big that each team is its own organization, and a player can, take his talents to different organizations within the league. So it's not exactly analogous perfectly, but
Oh, I think it's important to have more than one. It's hard to follow though, because there's so many promotions now. I used to watch back when I was younger. Like in the 90s and 2000s, like early to mid 2000s, we were trying to watch everything. We were
Mhm.
trading VHS tapes of weird shows and God knows where, just so we could see it, because we wanted to make sure we saw every single promotion that was out there. But now there's
Yeah,
so
man.
many that it's hard to do that. But I do think it's important. Like when Pride and the UFC were going at each other, for a period of time,
Hmm.
competing for top guys. Like Pride stole Murillo Bustamante, and they stole some other guys from UFC, and it was kind of like back and forth kind of thing, and that was cool to watch. Because you had these
Hmm.
two Goliaths kind of butting
Yeah.
heads, and yeah, I think it's important. Plus, it's important for fighters. I mean, there's so many people wanting to do this sport now,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, they need places to compete. And for
Yeah.
people like
Yeah.
you can go work a lot of these
Yeah, man.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah. And not just mixed martial arts, but all of combat sports because of the growth of MMA, other entrepreneurs are taking big swings and also being very creative and trying to come up with new things. And there's karate combat has
Yeah.
blown up. Obviously, we're gonna talk about the bare knuckle sport, which has its own copycats. And I don't say that with any kind of shade. It is what it is. It's great. And what else? Combat Taekwondo is a newer promotion that's trying to do big things. Muay Thai is getting bigger and bigger.
Oh, the fights in one are incredible. Some of these Muay Thai
Incredible.
fights, I'm like,
That's
jeez.
some of the most entertaining stuff you're gonna watch
Yeah.
in terms of, people trying to kill each other in a cage.
UFC, you see a guy take one body kick and he drops. These guys have hit each other
Oh my God,
a
it's
hundred
incredible.
times in a match and
Yeah.
not even flinch.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, yeah, they're growing their own guys organically too.
Yeah.
A lot of the ties, they're trying to, pump them up into stars, and it's working.
Yeah, I think one, they're kind of going different directions. They're kind of getting a little bit out of the MMA. I know they still have a few MMA fights they're doing, but I think they're going more in the direction of the stand up.
I think they should, man. I think they should focus on Muay Thai. I think that's awesome.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
all of the shows underneath them, like Warriors Cup in New York, that I was their ring announcer for the past like 3, 4 years. Warriors Cup is growing and growing and growing. They're becoming like the premier US based uh, Muay Thai show. And that's fucking incredible. And then look here in Michigan, Mitten Muay Thai, first ever Michigan Muay Thai promotion. They're trying to grow, they're trying to do big things. It's great, man. I love it. I love the competition. I love that there's more and more platforms for fighters, especially Muay Thai fighters, to go and express their talents.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into BKFC because I know you wanted to talk about that. Um, I like BKFC and I do think they have an advantage because they're a very different product from MMA, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they could
Yeah.
also say, look, this is what boxing was originally before they put on gloves. It was bare knuckle, and so we're like the real form of boxing. We're the more
Yeah.
exciting, more aggressive. Ours is a better version of what you guys are seeing in boxing. They could. That's where I think they should go. We're competing with boxing. We're not even competing with combat sports. You know. And that
You
event in
think
Philly, they that had a big feel to it. They had a big crowd, and
huge?
yeah,
Because the Feldmans, they're Philly based. Like that's a home game for them, man. So everybody came out. And then of course they put in their on their main event, they put Eddie Alvarez,
yeah.
who's also a Philly guy. Unfortunately, he lost, but that's the way it goes with bare knuckle.
Oh, Stevens is dangerous. He's always been
Oh,
dangerous. In the UFC, he was super dangerous.
I feel like Jeremy Stevens is one of the more underrated uh,
Yeah,
featherweight lightweights that was ever on the roster for the UFC. I think Jeremy Stevens is a guy that not many people were too excited to get matched up against because that guy is a killer.
yeah. He could knock out anybody.
Anybody, anybody. I think Connor was smart all those years ago at that press conference
Yeah,
to reply to Jeremy
dismiss
Stevens'
him.
call out and say, "Who the fuck is that guy?"
Yeah, right.
I mean, look, Prime Connor is I think beats anybody, including Jeremy Stevens back then. But Jeremy Stevens is no freaking joke, and he hasn't gone anywhere, man, in terms of his physique, his conditioning, his skills, and he put it on display this past weekend. And he knocked out a great guy in Eddie Alvarez.
Right, and it kind of makes it where boxers have struggled a little bit in these events because the rules are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I had DeMarcus Corley. He fought Floyd Mayweather. He fought all kinds of guys, great fighters, and he fought in bare knuckle, and he was winning his fight, but I think he got injured or something.
Mm.
And but he was saying, no, it's way different.
Of
Like you
course,
said, it's so different.
not
We
surprising
start
at
right in the
all.
middle, and they tell you to
Mm-hmm.
start fighting, and the rounds are short. He said it's just totally different vibe, and you know,
Everyone's getting all cut up. Everything, like any punch will cut you up bad and or
yeah,
knock you out. And yeah, the sport of bare knuckle boxing is nothing if it's not exciting. I mean, it is. It's you can't blink. You cannot blink watching bare knuckle. And hey, shout out to Jeff Houston, man, bare knuckle ring announcer guy. Uh, one of the best sets of pipes in the business, man. Jeff Houston, bow down to that man.
So, what do you think some of the stories are coming out of that? I know you said you had some things that you think set up some storylines or whatever.
I'm glad that Jeremy Stevens, it seems like with this win on this platform in a main event at a packed house in Philly for Bare Knuckle Mania, it seems like he's finally getting his flowers, as the kids say.
Hmm.
I mean, kind of similar, very similar to a Mike Perry.
Hmm.
I think Jeremy Stevens, when I heard that he's signing with Bare Knuckle, I was like, oh my God, this is like, he was made for this. And just like Mike Perry, Jeremy Stevens, Mike Perry, these kinds of guys who who went very far in MMA in the UFC, but couldn't go as far as they wanted to. Maybe I think Eddie Alvarez in an MMA bout, probably I would pick over Jeremy Stevens. I think Alvarez would be able to put it together more. Although he's such a warrior, he's going to scrap even in a cage with those gloves on. But it seems like Jeremy Stevens really is hitting his stride and has found a home in bare knuckle. And he's having his moment. And especially now that Conor McGregor bought into BKFC and is pumping his stardom into this brand. And I think that's also a huge part of probably why they're like selling out 17,000 seat arenas now. It's freaking part of the Conor McGregor brand now, man.
You think
And
so?
how can it not be? You don't think
Yeah, I
so?
don't. I'm not saying I don't think it hurts. I don't think people just bought tickets because Connor was going to be there, but maybe some of them did. Like when I lived in Japan, a friend of mine who speaks Japanese really well, he said he had met people at Pride who bought tickets just to see Antonio Inoki give his speech because he'd
Wow.
always give a speech at each Pride event
Mm-hmm.
during the intermission. Kind of,
Oh wow.
he'd say a few things, how's everybody doing, and things like that. He'd crack some jokes or whatever. And he knew people that bought tickets just to see that because Antonio Inoki was so famous, you
Wow.
know. So maybe there are some people who bought tickets just to see Conor McGregor. But if you can't
Yeah.
get him in there, I mean, he still has value, obviously. I think he does a good job of pumping things up, even when he's not fighting. He gets out there and talks crazy and acts kind of
Yes.
weird, and he's good
Yes.
at that.
I
That's,
do
yeah.
I do feel like anytime Connor is speaking into a microphone and David Feldman is standing like off his shoulder, the look of like concern on David Feldman's face, he looks kind of sick. He's like, "Oh my God, what's gonna happen?" Um, but obviously Connor, I think, has done. I think
Yeah, like
he's done a lot for that brand.
Dave Feldman having to get up there and say, Connor told me he's going to fight Jeremy Stevens. I don't know if it's going to happen. Well, why mention it then if you don't know it's going to happen? If you have a chance of making it or you've made the fight, then yeah, mention it. Otherwise, it's going to drown out here in a few weeks, and no one's going to care that you mentioned that, and it's all going to go away.
Okay, even though I just said that I'm happy that Jeremy Stevens is finally getting his flowers and having his moment, I cannot see Conor McGregor fighting Jeremy Stevens in a bare knuckle fight. I
No,
can't see it. I cannot see it.
I don't think he'll ever fight again. I've always felt that way.
I agree. I agree. I don't think he ever fights again.
Yeah, because he knows. Every fighter knows that when you have an injury like he had, and he's
Hmm.
older,
Hmm.
every athlete knows I can't do what I used to do.
He's had the injury. He is older, and the lifestyle that he's living now.
Yep.
Um,
He
and
knows
look,
I'm not as sharp. I'm not as crisp.
fucking
He
power to him.
knows that.
He did it. He did it.
Yeah.
He did it. And power to him. He do whatever he wants. And the only other thing other than actually still being an active fighter that is good for his brand and all of his brand, like actual like businesses underneath him, the next best thing is to try to keep the ball in the air and to keep having the public think that he's going to be fighting at some point, maybe this year, maybe next year. So he still gets to kind of be a fighter in everyone's minds. I think that's partly a business decision. That's a little cynical, but yeah, yeah. I think it only helps him sell more whiskey and more, I don't know, whatever other bit, more beer, more
I
what's
think
called
they
black.
cut him off though once he got in trouble.
Who did?
Connor, once he got,
Who cut him off?
I think Proper 12 took him down as a kind of like they aren't going to use
Like
him
a
anymore. And
spokesman. Now,
yeah,
wasn't it the deal with Proper
with the
12 where
civil trial that
Proper 12
Connor had.
he sold Proper 12, but he stayed on as like a
Yeah,
spokesman or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
yeah.
but he's still got other ventures,
Oh
man.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
got
for sure.
the Black Forge pub in Ireland. He's got a beer line, a beer brand,
Yeah, forged. Yeah,
got a few other things.
yeah.
So I think all of his businesses only are helped by the as much as he can stay in the public eye. And he's still young. Is he 40? No, he's not even 40 yet. Not even close. He's probably 37,
I
36.
don't know. Yeah, I'd have to look, but yeah, I don't think he's gonna fight again because I don't think he wants to get beat again. You know, he got beat by Poirier. I don't think he wants to get beat again in the public eye. He doesn't want. He's a proud guy. He doesn't want that to happen. I think he knows it would happen if he. I know he's got a big ego, but I think he's smart enough to know that if he got out there with someone who's got some game, he'd be in trouble probably.
I think the smartest move for Connor in terms of some form of fighting again, the most likely thing I think I could see him doing is going into the influencer celebrity
Yeah,
fighting circuit. I
that we
think I
talked about. Remember we talked about that when it first started happening.
I think he
Yeah.
will fight one of the two Paul brothers at some point. And that would make a ton of money for them. They'll probably each get paid $30 million or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. We talked about that when it first happened, the
Yeah.
first influencer fights, and I was like, this might be big. And and then you have Paul Tyson on Netflix, which is an awful fight, but it was crazy
Yeah.
how many people watched it. Imagine if you could get your
Yeah.
promotion on there. UFC, PFL could get on Netflix. I was telling Miguel, if you get 1/3 of the people that have Netflix to watch, that's millions of people.
Yeah.
They have so many subscribers. You don't need them all to watch. You could have this many, small little fragment, and that's still millions of people.
Yeah. A lot of people on that platform. And dude, I think Mike Tyson could be in his 90s and people will still tune in and watch that guy throw punches, man.
Yeah.
He'll be like, he could have one puncher's chance, man. Even he might be 94 years old. He might be 94. Yes, they might be wheeling him out there in a wheelchair, but he's still Mike Tyson and he has a puncher's chance.
Because the UFC can never dream of getting that many people to watch it where they're at right now. They're not getting. How many people watch that fight?
Which fight?
Paul Tyson.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It's a number that UFC
Let's
could
look it
never
up.
dream of getting. But if they get on Netflix,
Yeah.
now they could really increase the amount of people watch. I don't know if they could stick with the pay-per-view model, but they could get a ton more people to watch it. Because when there's nothing on, like I go through Netflix a lot lately, and I'm like, there's nothing really new out that I want to see.
Shit.
Like I was just going through the new releases, today.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, I don't want to watch any of the, except for that one about Black Hawk Down. I'll probably watch, but surviving Black Hawk Down. But the rest of them, I was like, I don't want to watch any of these. I thought when I got Netflix that they'd be cranking out series like Narcos and
Mhm.
God, they aren't even doing that. But if you put UFC on and people are bored, there's going to be people that don't watch combat sports that will watch that.
Maybe, especially with something that offers such novelty as Paul Tyson.
Right.
And by the way, I typed it in here. Apparently, over 108 million
Right.
people worldwide, that's global, uh, turned on that stream on Netflix for
Right.
Paul Tyson.
Yeah,
That's
Miguel, we were
insane.
talking about that with China. He was talking about that when Zheng Weili fought, trying to remember the other girl's name, the two Chinese fight for the
Oh,
title.
Yan Jianan.
Yeah. And he was saying even if a small fraction of China watches,
Oh,
the population is so big that it would still be a massive number.
massive
Yeah.
population of China.
Yeah.
What do we got?
Huge.
1.4 billion.
Yeah. People.
Wow.
So it's like if 1/3 of China watched the match, you know, that would be massive. Same with Netflix.
No. Yeah, you're right.
If I'm
You're
PFL, I'd
absolutely
try
right.
to get on there. I know they're on ESPN right now, but if they could beat UFC to Netflix,
Crazy, man. So
that
the
would
biggest
be.
storyline coming out of the going back to
Yep.
BKFC, Jeremy Stevens has his moment. And I mean, as MMA fans, I have to say it is very cool to have this full circle moment of Conor McGregor, who now is part owner of BKFC, getting in the ring and saying, "Who the fuck is this guy?" one more time. And actually, like Jeremy Stevens, like is apparently maybe going to fight Connor. But of course, I think that fight is going to be going down on the 7th of never.
So,
Um, but that was cool. That was cool. And
what?
again, going back to earlier in our conversation, the growth of combat sports overall, I really am like thrilled for these guys, like the Mike Perrys, the Eddie Alvarez's, the Jeremy Stevens of the sport, to be able to go to this kind of a platform and make a lot of money. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and BKFC is interesting. It feels like they have a lot of momentum.
They
You know,
do. They definitely do now.
and so it's going to be interesting to see. I kind of feel like they need to pull some more boxers in just so they can kind of add to that boxing verse. Because that Paulie Malignaggi versus Artem Lobov fight, I thought that was really interesting for them to host.
It
That fight.
was. Yeah.
And I think some other people watched that because they wanted to see how Paulie was going to do. In that kind of format.
That was one of the early fights for me that really showed me that bare knuckle really is different from than boxing. Because I was so certain that Paulie Malignaggi was going to just have his way with Artem, but it didn't happen. It happened the other way.
Right, because you can hold and hit, which is illegal in boxing.
Mm-hmm.
This position is illegal, to
Mm-hmm.
hold behind the head and hit because it's so effective that every match would just become a race to see who could get to that position.
Yeah.
So boxing
Yeah.
just made it illegal to do,
Yeah.
you know. And bare knuckle, you can hockey fight with this
Mm-hmm.
position.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Lieben, he was a guy who used it great when he was in bare knuckle, and he was
That's
probably
right.
one of the best guys in MMA at it to begin with. I
Yeah.
was telling him I trained with him 2008 for most of that year, and I remember I was telling him, dude, this is what you had you been 20 something. This is your game right here.
Yeah. He would have been a star in bare
Yeah,
knuckle in
grab
BKFC
behind the head
for
and
sure.
kill people.
Oh man, he was such a savage.
And he was savage in bare knuckle. I think he went 3-0 or something. All
Wow.
knockouts.
I think now he's judging. Is he judging or
Yeah,
refing?
he judged a championship fight this last UFC event.
Yeah. Good for
Yeah.
him.
Um, Austin Trout did well in BKFC
Mm-hmm.
in his fight, so he's one boxer who crossed over and made it work. But I think they need to do that a little bit more because, like I said, in my opinion, they should be competing with boxing, not the UFC. They're a totally different
Wow.
style of fighting than the UFC. It's more
Why do you,
boxing.
why? I mean, clearly it is more boxing. It's yes,
Yeah.
they are yes, but there's so much more closer to MMA, and for
Hmm.
some reason they attract more MMA fighters. I think they attract more of the MMA fan base. Boxing seems to be a very different universe from mixed martial arts. Still,
Like, could you imagine, like, if someone like Gervonta Davis agreed to do a fight in bare knuckle?
yeah,
How many
no,
people would watch that? It'd be insane. Or
it would be
Canelo
insane,
or
but I
anybody.
can't imagine it. Or
Right.
I out of other current active boxer, even though he's technically like not that active right now, Ryan Garcia. I could see Ryan Garcia dipping into the bare knuckle world
Right.
because
And I think
he
that'd
seems
be
to be a wacky enough guy,
yeah, that'd be huge for them
and it
if
would
they could.
be.
And I think that's something that would put him even more than Connor could ever dream of doing in his role right now. He can't. He's not fighting. In his role as a promoter of bare knuckle to some extent. I think if you get Ryan Garcia in there, that would take
Yeah,
things, especially if he agreed to do multiple fights, not
and
just a
he's a
one-off.
star.
You know.
Now I'm not the biggest boxing guy, so what does Ryan Garcia fight at? Like 140? I want to say
I think
140, right around there.
yeah, I think he fought Davis at 135 maybe, but yeah, he's a yeah, he's a guy who could fight in bare knuckle, and you're right, he's probably crazy enough to do it. Oscar
I think
probably
he's
wouldn't
crazy
let
enough to
him
do it. Yeah.
because he's with Golden Boy, but yeah, that's the kind of guy you could maybe get. And I think bare knuckle could do that. They could go to some guys, hey, you're doing good in boxing, but you're not getting many fights, and you know,
Now,
this
while I
sport we can get you fights.
yeah, and while I think that Connor won't actually fight a Jeremy Stevens in BKFC, imagine if you had Connor versus Ryan Garcia in
Yeah,
BKFC.
yeah,
That would be mind blowing. And I think that would do numbers.
yeah, for sure. And that's why I said I feel like they should attack boxing more than MMA because they're saying, okay, boxing fans, you aren't getting the fights you want, or when you get them, the guys are too old. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
we're the new boxing. We are. We can make the fights you want to see. We have up and coming guys. We're a more aggressive style, this more violent style boxing. We're the more extreme version of boxing, you know.
And they sure are.
Yeah. And this
They
is what
sure
you
are,
really
man.
want. You don't know it yet, but this is what you really want, you know. That and boxing's a massive sport. So yeah, let's go after the bigger sport. MMA, it's where it's at, you know, to me.
Hmm.
And they're not going to get the biggest stars in MMA in their prime. Those guys are going to be out of their prime when they get them, you know.
Yeah. That's
Maybe
okay
in
though.
boxing they could, like you said, Garcia, they could get Garcia in his prime.
Dude,
That'd
I
be
would watch
totally
that.
different. That wouldn't be Paulie Malignaggi. That wouldn't be, uh, Austin Trout, who's still
Hmm.
good. Um,
Yeah.
these guys, Ryan Garcia would be a guy who could still be fighting in boxing and winning fights.
Yeah.
You know,
And I would watch that. I would watch the shit out of that.
yeah, I think this is when I finish the show, I'm gonna make a clip about this. You proposed Ryan Garcia at BKFC. I'm gonna put
Yeah,
that up
man.
because
Do
it
it.
it makes total sense.
And I to your point, I think he's crazy enough to do it. Why
I mean,
not?
he was gonna fight in Rising against a guy who's significantly bigger than him.
Was he?
Yeah, he was
Oh,
gonna
when was
fight.
this?
Um, it was a few shows back. I think Horizon 48 was the event he was going to fight on. Pacquiao fought the guy that he was going to fight,
Hmm.
and he's a K1 champion, and he's much bigger than Garcia and Pacquiao. You know, and I think if he had really gone after Pacquiao, I think he might even beat Manny because he was hitting him with some good shots, man. But yeah, I don't want to see Garcia fight Manny Pacquiao or somebody. I'd much rather see him fight somebody in bare knuckle like you're talking, Jeremy
Yeah, why
Steven,
not? Some
Eddie
kind of
Alvarez.
crossover. Yeah.
Yeah,
Get him in there.
hell yeah. And I'm sure
Uh,
there's other guys that you could. They're not championship level guys, but they're good,
hmm.
and who could probably become big stars in BKFC and stop floundering in boxing, where they can't get people fights, and a lot of people aren't as watching as much as they used to because we aren't getting
Hmm.
the fights we want. And another guy who would do real good in in BKFC, the guy who's rumored to be fighting Canelo, Crawford.
Oh
Crawford
yeah.
grew up as a wrestler, so he understands the clinch.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Terrence Crawford, he's used to fighting in the clinch because he was a wrestler, a high school wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
God, he's good.
yeah, you could get someone like that. I don't know if he'd do it with all the money he's made, but
Does that
yeah,
have a date yet? Him and
that's the next
Canelo
step for BKFC.
to get not just ex
Somebody who's a
MMA.
famous boxer that's kind
Right.
of young that will do it more than once, multiple times.
So the next step for them, because now they're attracting former MMA fighters. Now they needed to attract recently retired boxers who are massive stars. Like when Bud Crawford hangs up his boxing gloves, it's like, hey, come take a bare knuckle fight. We'll pay you 10 million or however much
And I think boxers are
they pay
curious
guys.
about it because they know they can do it. They think they can do that. You know, I
Yeah.
fought without gloves. I can fight. I can do this.
I mean, look, if it's Terrence Bud Crawford, I'm picking him against anybody in a fists only striking match. Anybody. Until, until he's beaten, I'm not gonna pick against him.
Because, like I said, I feel like it has a lot of momentum. But where's the next wall to
Hmm.
break through?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, and David's brother, the celebrity boxing guy. They're brothers.
Yep. Yeah.
So, hey, it's all kind of circling around. It's all kind of swirling around. We'll see how it all kind of lands in the next year or two.
Yeah. Now, where can people find you? Events you're doing. Obviously, said the Anthony Pettis event, but
Yeah, we got APFC coming up towards the end of March. It's going to be in Milwaukee at the Potawatomi Casino. Special guest of honor is going to be Dustin the Diamond Poirier. Second time as a guest at APFC, and it's going to be my second time having the honor of introducing Dustin Poirier to the crowd, which is truly a career highlight for me, man. Because I'm a Dustin diehard. I always have been since his featherweight days, man. He's the only fighter out of all the guys that I have had the privilege of introing at APFC events. And I've introed Cain Velasquez, Nate Diaz, John Jones. Dustin is the only guy who I broke my rule of freaking not fanboying over any of these dudes.
hmm
I broke my rule for Dustin. I went up to him at some point in the night. I was like, hey, man, I'm such a big fucking fan of yours, dude. And I have been for years. And this is such a huge honor for me. And he and his wife was also there. They couldn't have been nicer. Just a lovely, lovely couple. So catch me there March, I believe it's March 22nd, Potawatomi Casino on UFC Fight Pass for APFC. Also, Art of Scrap in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Art of Scrap is one of Indiana's biggest MMA promotions. They'll be doing one of their events coming up this spring. So look out for that as well.
yeah. Poirier could do bare knuckle.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, that would do numbers.
He's a guy who would just war like no tomorrow.
How about Connor
Michael
and
Chandler could
Dustin?
do it too, I think. He's
Connor
not winning
Dustin
in
4.
UFC.
Connor Dustin 4, bare knuckle.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael Chandler should do it, I think, too. Michael Chandler
Oh
hasn't
yeah.
won. He's struggling to win fights in the UFC, but he likes to throw down. He gets in a lot of wars. I think he'd be perfect for that.
See, but
But
here's the thing about bare knuckle though. See, some of these guys leave MMA and they take like a boxing match. And I think, because I'm not a fighter, but this is my theory. I think they feel a little safer in boxing with like the 10-ounce gloves or whatever, however much they weigh. Do these guys really want to go do bare knuckle? Because in bare knuckle, it's like, oh, let me take like the boxing match is almost like a victory lap fight, it seems. Let me go make another nice little chunk of money and I'll do a boxing fight. I don't have to wrestle. I don't have to train wrestling or grappling. I'm gonna go box. Bare knuckle, and man, it's like, am I crazy enough to go do a bare knuckle fight? I'm gonna get all cut up. I'm like, that is a certainty. My face is gonna get rearranged. I could get knocked out bad. So I think it takes a special kind of like unhingedness, like a Mike Perry, like a Jeremy Stevens to go do bare knuckle.
it does, but like Chris Lieben was telling me, you can't spar bare knuckle. So it's
Right.
different. You're not sparring as much. You can't hit full power with your hands. You have to be careful because you could break your hand easier.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people have to take some heat off of their punches rather than throwing them as hard as they can. Um, yeah, so it's just a different. There are in some ways where you're taking, even though you're taking more facial damage, long-term damage, you're not taking as much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hey, I think that's one of the few fights that would get Conor McGregor to fight again. I think if Dustin said, "Yeah, I'll fight Conor one more time in BKFC and pay us both a ton of money, boatloads of money," I think there's real heat between them. I think there's real dislike.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, and it would sell. It would definitely sell.
And where can people find you on Instagram?
On Instagram is like my main platform that I am active on. You can find me at the Michael Hanson or the Michael Hanson.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Everybody keep a lookout for him. He's like official announcer of my show. Only one I've had on my show. And
Nice.
yeah, and he always, as you see, he's always a great guest too. So
Oh, thanks, man.
yeah, always.
Always fun
What
coming on
happened
and
to the And New
chatting up.
show?
Oh, it kind of withered on the vine, man. It's kind of withered on the vine. It's okay. It was a great time.
Yeah, thinking about doing podcasts, like me and Miguel always say, this guy's something you got to really love MMA or whatever. Like me and Miguel would probably talk about this stuff, or me and you, even if I wasn't filming this stuff.
Well, that's the
It's
thing.
not a big
Me and
deal.
my two buddies who we did the show with for a couple years, and we did it for a few years, and we would often say like, man, we're on like episode 140. We all been feeling like we've still been doing it for only like, you know, 5, 6 months. It's like, no, they're like 2 years into it. But the three of us we'd still talk almost every day. We have an ongoing text thread. We talk about fights every single day. So the conversation's still going. It was just the time commitment, as you know,
Yeah.
of arranging a weekly show and the editing of it and the making the thumbnails and all those things that you don't necessarily think about when you're kind of cooking up the idea of like, hey, we should do a show, the three of us. And it was a great time, man. I loved every second of doing it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, it's always great having you on. People check out Michael Hanson at the Michael Hanson on Instagram, and appreciate all the support. Subscribe to the channel. Till next time, take care.
You got it, man. You too.